Oh, it's hitting a house or a barn. Look.
Oh, it just destroyed something. It's moving toward that house. Uh-oh. Oh, no.
This is about to be bad.
It's fixing the barrel of that house. Yeah, just hold up. Pieces of the house falling apart.
Oh, no.
Massive, powerful tornadoes ripped across Kansas yesterday, damaging homes and injuring at least 2 people.
Several touched down, including this one. This is just outside of Dodge City. Damage reports are coming in from multiple counties. Large hail also reported with this storm. And earlier, the same storm chasers encountered this large twister.
You can see several cars and a police officer quickly stop just ahead of the storm, and then just moments later the twister grows. You can see a large debris field around that tornado.
Streets have been flooded and traffic affected. Many cities of Guangdong province have been hit by rainstorms during the past few months. Statistics from the Guangdong Hydrology Department show that rainfall in the first 4 months of 2016 has been almost double that of last year. Guangdong's Flood, Drought and Typhoon Control Office is busy preparing for possible emergencies.
In order to prevent potential disasters, we have created an emergency response system along with 43 other departments. Rescue forces, including the military, firefighters, and police department, are on standby. Should anything happen, all these groups will jointly work on search and rescue operations.
The headquarters has set up a video information sharing system with all the branch offices across the province to improve efficiency. Guangdong province has decided to invest over 100 million yuan in this year's disaster control and relief work. All relevant departments were called together to have meetings to be alert and get prepared. Most of the major rescue forces are well prepared for the flooding and typhoon season. The Guangdong Armed Police Corps have hundreds of rescue boats and other professional equipment ready for deployment if necessary. They've also come up with an emergency plan for potential disasters. Deputy Commander Cheng He is in charge of disaster rescue work. He said they have made detailed plans in 4 major areas of Guangdong province.
If there is a major disaster, we can deploy up to 10,000 soldiers to carry out rescue operations. In addition to upgraded rescue equipment, we have also been conducting special training sessions for rescue teams to improve their skills.
In order to guarantee the mechanism's practical operation, Guangdong's Armed Police Corps arranged several disaster relief and rescue work drills in April and May. Weather forecasters warn that heavy rainstorms and strong typhoons are expected to hit Guangdong in the next few months. And the disaster control and rescue work has become a systematic project, requiring all related departments to take precautionary measures and work closely together.
Xinyi in South China's Guangdong province was hit by its heaviest rainfall in over 2 centuries. The torrential rains caused landslides, flash floods, and swollen rivers, leaving at least 8 people dead. 74-year-old Li Huaquan was among the few who were rescued from a landslide in Tonggu village. When the downpours began last Friday, he was cooking at home. But then, part of a hill collapsed nearby, and Li was buried by the landslide.
We heard him cry for help. We tried very hard to pinpoint his location. Then we found an appropriate place to break the wall from which the man could be brought out.
Li was pulled out 4 hours later. He was rushed to hospital, but was found to be suffering very minor injuries.
The new developments all new at noon about a rude awakening in Beech Grove. A loud midnight military training exercise had several residents up in arms, mainly because it took them by surprise. RTV6's Eric Cox live with those new developments this midday. Eric.
Mark, overnight the old St. Francis Hospital building here behind me was transformed into a military training ground. Now, we've had so many people commenting on our Facebook, residents living in this area upset about not knowing what was going on. Well, we listened and we're working for you. I have in my hand a letter from the city of Beech Grove's mayor, Dennis Buckley, addressing the United States military, in it proving that the city knew about this overnight training session involving gunfire, explosions, and even low-flying helicopters well over 2 months ago. Now, still, police here in this area tell me that they only informed the residents living within a 4-block radius of the hospital just a few hours in advance of the exercise. The training session involved at least 100 military personnel, many of them armed in this neighborhood. Even though police tell me they were trying to protect the interests of our nation's military, some residents are still upset about being left in the dark. Take a listen.
Let us know that you're going to do this. You know, you got people around here, they might have had a heart attack, older people. They're hearing bombs. It sounds just like a war. That's not right. You know, it was poor judgment on whoever's part.
We're sorry for people that were startled and all those things. But I think that the overall idea to do the overall best for people, to help out our military and the men and women who serve us every day, I think it's a fine line, and we tried to do the best we could with it.
Now, the mayor's letter also reveals that the city and Franciscan Alliance, the owners of the building here behind me, are allowing the military to utilize this building for training through Friday, meaning that there very well could be more loud late nights ahead for the residents here in Beech Grove.
Now talk about terrifying. A bird and a plane collide. And here's Air Tracker 7 giving you a view of the damaged Virgin America plane after it returned to DIA. Delaying its trip to San Francisco, it had to make an emergency landing. Denver 7's Mark Stewart is at DIA tonight. And Mark, strikes like these can really be devastating to planes.
And for that reason, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes here at Denver International Airport and across the country. From geese to hawks, bird strikes are an ongoing concern. Air Tracker 7 flying above the Virgin America Airbus that hit a bird, parked at the gate as an engine is inspected for damage.
Airbus 320 had a bird strike on takeoff.
The flight was in the air for just minutes when radar reveals it turned around, back to DIA.
It was a grinding noise, and Gil said, "What's that?" And I said, "I think it's just turbulence." Yeah, it was kind of a grinding noise.
This has happened before. The hole on the front of this United 737 happened after a bird strike. It was getting ready to land at DIA in 2012.
You might see a fast blur right before you hit the bird.
Kevin Kuhlman knows what it's like. He's flown for the military and for an airline. He understands the importance of getting back on the ground.
The engine has a lot of moving parts in it, and even a small chip in one of those pieces can cause unbalanced situations or dangerous situations, airflow problems.
Bird strikes can crack windshields like this Delta jet just last month, flying from New York to Nashville. DIA does what it can, from mowing the grass to noisemakers, to keep the birds away from the planes.
It just happens when you're flying, especially at high speeds.
Most of these bird strikes happen either during landing or takeoff, as was the case today, because birds can't fly as high as planes.
Back on November 29th of 2015, just after midnight, Brooklyn Park police officer responded to a complaint of loud music coming from a vehicle in northern Brooklyn Park. Upon arrival, he made contact with the only occupant of that car, 25-year-old Lance Carr. The officer determined that Carr had an outstanding felony warrant for his arrest. He asked Carr to step out of the vehicle and place his hands behind his back. Carr then turned and viciously attacked the officer. Again, like I'd said before, the report was loud music coming from a vehicle, which is what Officer Hyman responded to. He's by himself. It's a one-man car. All of our squad cars are one officer squad cars here in Brooklyn Park. So he's by himself. Just approached the vehicle and identified Lance Carr. He's received information at this point that the individual has a felony warrant. That was the dispatcher asking him if he was out with that individual. He reapproaches on the driver's side, asks Mr. Carr to step out and place his hands behind his back. I'm not sure how much audio will be there for that, but that's what I want to share with you.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Is there 500 units calling to me?
The other problem was, as the sheriff indicated when we watched the video, he couldn't get to his radio to call for help. Luckily, he did do what he did because, as you heard, some of the neighbors that I think originally placed that 911 call did call our dispatch, update them that he was involved being viciously assaulted.
2100 on Scott Lane status. I have a party on line saying there's an officer there being assaulted.
1120, we're on run. 509, hold the name.
Emergency traffic keys may all others car to car.
Get my son!
At one point, you heard the weapon go off. That was an intent by our officer to end this vicious attack upon him. After that was not successful, he actually did something to his weapon to make it useless for both him and the suspect. The fact that that weapon was discharged, the officers that were responding to the scene didn't have that information. It was actually reported, I believe, to dispatch. I don't know that they had time to report that back. So when they pulled up, all they knew was what they saw is a car on top of the officer. So that's why they went in and used the taser to subdue him. Had they known that he had been his firearm had been taken from him and he attempted to use deadly force, the response may have been different.
You can clearly hear those sirens, but he did not disengage.
We've all been involved in scuffles, and it's usually a scuffle to keep from being apprehended. So as soon as I break away from you, I'm going to run from the scene. This, and I think Officer Hyman quickly learned too, that this was not an attempt to escape. This was an attempt to kill him. And I think that's what brought that much more adrenaline to Officer Hyman.
5122, we've got one in custody. I need north line fire on arrest now.
5122, one in custody, north and fire on arrest. Do you need additional squad?
The Islamic State militant group has killed nearly 150 people and injured hundreds more in President Bashar al-Assad's previously safe Alawite heartland in Syria. Kim Mo-gyun has the latest.
The wave of bombings hit President Assad's coastal heartland, a part of the country which until now has escaped the worst of Syria's bloody civil war. According to the Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, at least 148 people were killed and 200 injured in Monday's attacks. Syrian state media also reported the attacks but said the death toll was 78. The Islamic State militant group has claimed responsibility, saying it was targeting members of Assad's Alawite minority. Reports say 3 bombings targeted bus stations in the port city of Tartus, which is home to a Russian naval facility, and another 4 in Jableh, near a Russian-operated airbase. The latter is where President Assad comes from and remains the center of his support base. The head of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the bombings were by far the deadliest attacks on the 2 cities since the conflict in Syria erupted more than 5 years ago. Russia has expressed concern and said the bomb blasts underscore the need to press ahead with Geneva peace talks, which broke down last month. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon strongly condemned the attacks and called for an end to all acts of terror. He said those behind the bombings should be held legally responsible. The war in Syria has killed an estimated 270,000 people and displaced millions since March 2011.
In the hours leading up to the rally, inside, hundreds of protesters lined the streets outside, and it wasn't always peaceful. News 13's Gabrielle Burkhardt has been out there all day where things are really heating up in downtown Albuquerque. Gabrielle?
Jessica, just minutes ago, this intersection here was full of protesters. Now, we want to mention earlier there were reports that tear gas was deployed. APD tells us that is not true. There was some smoke from some burning items and possibly burning tires. Now, everything started out calm this afternoon, but things started escalating as a line of protesters were greeting Trump supporters as they arrived, calling it the Walk of Shame. Hundreds of protesters lined the streets outside of the Albuquerque Convention Center hours before Donald Trump was scheduled to speak.
We need to make sure that he knows that we do not accept the message that he's bringing and the hatred.
The anti-Trump movement started a march down Central. Then things started heating up as protesters clashed with Trump supporters. Our cameras caught someone throwing water at a Trump supporter passing by in a wheelchair. A man shouted back, asking officers to help him out.
These people have no clue what really goes on, I guess. They're even going to lie to themselves about what they just did to a handicapped person who has a right to rally for the other side.
By the time the rally started at 7 o'clock, Trump protesters rushed toward the convention center entrance, and the police responded in riot gear. At one point, officers decided this was an unlawful assembly and asked people to move back. Protesters we spoke with earlier say they planned to keep everything peaceful, but as the night went on, some people started burning Trump t-shirts across the street, shouting at police, and even slamming barriers into the wall. Now, even within the last few minutes, things have calmed down right behind me, but that's because police have moved us back away from where all of the action was happening. There were people jumping on cop cars, and we saw some people getting detained. But again, we heard from APD police that the only arrests were made inside the convention center. We're still waiting to hear if anyone outside was arrested. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Gabrielle. Now, Albuquerque police again say although there were reports of tear gas used, they did not deploy it. They did use smoke, though. Protesters did throw rocks and bottles at police.
Back up, back up, back up. Move it now! Get out! Move! Move!
The U.S. Air Force plans to develop its own seismic technology program to better detect North Korea's nuclear activities. In a report attached to the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2017, the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee says it supports the $7.5 million allocated to developing the related technologies. The report said the program is a key element in detecting and monitoring Pyongyang's nuclear activities. The U.S. Air Force has used reconnaissance aircraft to detect radioactive materials after North Korea's previous nuclear tests. Experts say the Senate's support for the program shows Washington is increasingly concerned about North Korea's growing intercontinental ballistic missile capability.